I'm going to read to you an email that I sent to Dr. Garrett and Dr. Coplan on May 15th, 2020. I said, I just had a chat with Dr. Garrett. I'd love to address the medication issue sooner rather than later. Yes, there are so many adverse side effects, sexual dysfunction, for example, but we decided reducing the Invega and potentially going into full-blown psychosis during coronavirus pandemic might not be wise. Meaning I don't want to wind up in the hospital then get corona. When society becomes more stable, because I've made a lot of progress with Dr. Garrett, I hope we can tweak something and see how I do on fewer meds. I suspect I'll be fine. And this is Dr. Coplan's email on May 15, 2020. Okay, Andrew, we can certainly consider testing out how well you are on lower meds. However, my observation is that we are already having several psychotic episodes that through the help of cognitive reframing and meds, you are thankfully able to navigate your way out of. Some of the manic features of these episodes can be included by rapid caffeine intake in large amounts, which we agreed was not the ideal strategy. The problem is that the delusions are invariable, entail nefarious actions on the behalf of one or both parents. When I first met you, your mother recounted how you had spent several inpatient admissions delusionally convinced that you had been abused by your parents as a child, and would yell out this revelation to all comers. So it's a precarious line we are dealing with, and the original delusion is still regularly retrieved. I need to discuss this with Dr. Garrett, but I don't share the same sense that you are safely situated and well removed from the delusions. An important component of these delusions is the inevitable necessity to be widely announced in an attempt to correct the wrongs of the past. This makes the delusions non-benign, as even if you come out of them, you are communicated with them with full conviction to any available audience. With consequence. That being said, it is clear to your credit that you have continued to be perfectly compliant with this unwieldy combination of meds and their upsetting side effects. As I say, I need to discuss the state of delusions with Dr. Garrett before endorsing lowering the meds. Is low risk. Exercise clinic. I need to discuss with Dr. Garrett before endorsing the lowering the meds. Is a low risk exercise clinically. Sincerely, Dr. Coplan. And I said on May 15th, 2020, yes, I've been perfectly compliant with my meds since 2011-2012. Actually, I'm afraid of being on a mega regimen for this long can be carcinogenic, but I'm also aware it's helping. Everyone says the meds are well researched, and there are many people at the Fountain House who've been on meds their whole life, and they're in their 60s, and are continuing to have a lengthy life. While the coronavirus is happening, it wouldn't be wise to risk a hospitalization by lowering my meds, though I suspect I'd be fine. I'd love to test it out as soon as we can. With Dr. Garrett, I've made a huge recovery, and I am able to recognize and come out of delusions now. I don't get completely lost in psychosis anymore. I'm not the same as I was back then, because in 2011 I couldn't even verbalize that it was a delusion. Now I'm able to explain the way my mind works. That's huge. The coffee intake has reduced since the extreme days. I only have 3 cups a day. In fact, I tried to stop completely but got massive headaches and fatigue. So I still drink some. If we do come down on meds, it has to be done right. But first, let's get through this coronavirus pandemic. And Dr. Garrett said on May 15, 2020, Andrew, I agree with the points Dr. Coplan makes. You are able to use your cognitive skills to pull yourself out of a nosedive into delusional daydreaming much more effectively than used to be the case. But the idea that your parents are sadistic abusers is still very close to the surface still. You were caught up in these thoughts last week. Here's a metaphor. You know when you go to the beach and try to stand up in the receding tide, but sometimes the tide knocks you over? If you were to be on less medication and your biology started to catch you in a riptide that knocked you down, it would be quite damaging to your recovery. You have made definite progress in psychotherapy. You are getting stronger psychologically, but I would not recommend, especially now with hospitals preoccupied with COVID, that a risk be taken at this time. It is hard to pick one indicator how strong you are psychologically, but the daydream that your mother takes pleasure in sexually abusing you is an important marker. Since I have been working with you, though I don't keep a specific record of this, I think the longest you have gone without that delusion resurfacing is 10 days to 2 weeks. The delusion fades more quickly than in the past, but it isn't gone. It is still too close to the surface to take a risk now, frustrating as your situation is. In a spirit of dark humor, which I know you enjoy, which would you prefer? Sexual frustration or rehospitalization? I hope the former rather than the later. Dr. G.